Hello, everyone. I'm Gary Sturgis, grief specialist, speaker, bereavement facilitator, and the author of Surviving, Finding a Way from Grief to Healing. I'm so excited to be talking today with Maureen Hancock. Some of you may know Maureen, but for those of you who don't, Maureen has quite an impressive resume. So Maureen is an internationally renowned spirit medium, intuitive, teacher, lecturer, holistic healer, and she's the author of the best-selling book, The Medium Next Door, Adventures of a Real-Life Ghost Whisperer. And I can also tell you she has a really great sense of humor. So she's sometimes known as the comedian medium. So Maureen, thank you so much for taking the time out of what I know is a very busy schedule to talk with me today.
Thank you for having me.
And I do want to say I do have a copy of your book, and I have to admit, I've read it like 3 or 4 times, so it's a pretty beat up copy. And I've lent it out to people, and I always tell them I want it back. So if you haven't read Maureen's book, The Medium Next Door, definitely hop over to Amazon and grab yourself a copy. So one of the reasons I wanted to chat with Maureen was because so many of my Facebook followers and the members of my support groups, as well as the workshops that I facilitate, are always asking me questions about mediums. And I'll be honest, I don't have all the answers, but I do have some answers. I do have those questions in my hands right now. And I'm so excited to be able to ask Maureen some of these questions and get her answers. So, Maureen, for the benefit of people that don't know you or haven't read your book, could you just tell us what exactly is a medium? Because I think maybe some people really just don't know.
So, a medium is somebody that can connect to your loved ones in spirit. And for me, it just kind of came by accident. There are mediums out there that actually go through training. And I do teach people because I feel that we are all mediums. And you see them popping up all over, which I know we'll touch on that. But I was a child and I used to see spirits walking around the house. I had lead paint poisoning. So for me, I was in a coma for a while, and when you have sometimes sort of a tragic event can spur or open that portal to the other side. And then I was in a car accident at 25 years old, broke every bone in my face, had a near death. And then I started to hear voices. So I can also talk to your viewers and listeners and mine too about the many ways that you can be your own medium. But that's the medium in a nutshell.
Okay. And so, as you know, my goal as a grief specialist is to help people find their way through the maze of grief and loss after they lose a loved one. So, I'm just wondering, how do you feel talking to a medium can help someone who's grieving a loss?
So, first of all, I want to start with saying, be careful. Go with folks that have been referred, that have a good reputation, because you can get into medium addiction. And if you are seeking out a medium, the ways that I feel that we can help is offering you that connection that they are okay. I hate to use the word closure, maybe you do too, but
I do.
many seeking a medium or any kind of peace after loss, their number one question to me is, are they okay? And I'm getting choked in. I'm just thinking about it, but are they okay? Do they hear me? Are they missing out? Are they still with us? And I believe that our loved ones in spirit can answer that, but not just through, that kind of, oh yes, they're okay. You want validation. You want a medium to say, I have your father. I'm hearing the name Bill. He looks about 6'2". He says he was in the Navy. He had 5 children. He has his son with him. Actual proof of an afterlife. And I just feel, and I've witnessed that it can bring such peace, especially I specialize in with working with parents who have physically lost children. And of course they want to know, like, who are they with? Are they still here? What are the signs? How do they let us know that they're around? And it is accessible to all of us without a medium.
That's so true. And I want to touch on something you said. So the first time, after I lost my spouse, I was kind of skeptical about the whole medium thing. And a friend of mine said, really come with me. And so she took me and I saw one. And when I came out of I remember that day so vividly because I came out of that meeting with her and I felt like so much comfort and peace after that meeting. And so after that, I wanted to go back again and back again and back again. So it seems like it could be an addictive high that you want to keep chasing. So do people want to come back and see you like numerous times? And if so, what advice do you give them when they want to do that?
And they do. I used to say to the audience, like at my events when I do stage mediumship, like how many are new to seeing me? And it would be, maybe a quarter of the room would raise a hand, how many have seen me before? And a ton would raise their hand. So I mean, my events are definitely uplifting, and I use a lot of comedy, like you mentioned, and it's a night out, but it's also watching other people's connections, and it's really cool. But I often say to people, when I used to do private readings, I would say, you should wait 6 months before you come back again. We've got to get new information, and try not to be seeking out every Tom, Dick, and Harry medium, because you hold the abilities. Your loved ones are in your aura, right? The electromagnetic field around you. They're sort of like experiencing a different type of life, the non physical with you. And we raise our vibration. So, this is what I say to people: go out in nature. That's where you're going to be able to feel them more. I go tree bathing. I walk the dogs. I have to go hiking every day. That's how I get out of my anxiety, get out of your head, learn to lead with your heart, and not overthinking and holding it up to the light, and trying not to jump to a medium for your connection. I teach people. So meditate, pray, walk, get outside, find ways to quiet your mind so that you can hear those little nuances, or look over and it's 11:11 on the clock, or, oh, there's a cardinal, right? Get out in nature, because that's where they show up, I feel.
Yeah, and that's true. And I read something in your book that you said something about, going to a medium is not the only resolution for like trying to heal your grief. There are other things that you can do as well, not just that. But as a grief specialist, I'm often asked my opinion. In my support groups, I can honestly tell you that there's never a group where the question doesn't get posed to me by somebody in the group that says, like, as a grief specialist, what do you think about mediums? Do you think they're real? And my answer to that is, I always tell them that it doesn't matter whether I believe in them or not. What I think matters is if talking to them brings you some comfort. So I wanted to just quickly just read something that I found really interesting in your book. You say in your book, you said, I've met thousands of people over the years in this work from all walks of life. Some were believers, some were healthy skeptics, and others didn't have one belief left, even after experiencing some of the most trying times of their lives in the physical loss of a loved one. And, that really resonated with me, because I thought to myself, how I wondered, from you, a spirit medium, how do you personally respond to some of the cynicism that surrounds mediums? Like, how do you respond to that when someone says, like, I don't believe it, or
So a lot of times I don't, because it's, like grief is a fingerprint and everybody's on their own journey. I'm not here to convince. And I feel like if the time is right and we want to open to the possibility, then they show up. And my audience is maybe a quarter are skeptics, and that's okay. When I first started 23 years ago, I would steer clear of the skeptics. I could tell when I walked in a room, you'd see the guy
yeah.
like, "Oh," you know, and now that I'm in menopause, I'm like, what's up, your father's here? Who's your daddy?" And, so I bring the humor, which helps open up the skeptic, but I just offer folks, like, just a chance to give them an opening to show you directly. And I always say to my skeptics, I'm like, "Listen, I'm just here to deliver the messages. I'm not here to convince you or force this on you, but there may be a time in your life that you're going to really resonate with this and you're going to take it in." But what I've witnessed at my events, I just had one last night, brought a couple of guys backstage. That sounds sassy, but it's not. And I was bringing through, dad and mom and brother and this and that. And to see their faces go from this heart, I don't want to believe, to like the softening and like, mommy, and the validation. So I get a lot of feedback like, wow, this changed my life. And now half my audience is a men.
Yeah.
Now, not to keep pointing, because women are skeptical too. And you should be. You should be. You should be sort of like a healthy skeptic where you go in with an open mind, but trust your gut because there are mediums out there that are scammers and they will take advantage, and be very, very careful of the psychic that says, your loved one is upset with you. I feel like you have a family curse. You need to pay me $300 and, remove the curse. They're out there. Watch out for the neon sign psychic, palm reading, things like that. Sometimes, they're not coming from a pure place. So use your best judgment, but don't let don't let the cynicism take over. Be skeptical.
Good point. And I think, I do the same thing in my workshops. I use humor sometimes. And in the beginning I was so afraid to do that because I thought, I don't want these people to think I'm like making a joke of grief and loss. But I found that people are very receptive to me using humor in it. But I also know that people don't like to talk about grief and loss. I think like in our society, it's not a topic people want to talk about. So I always say in my workshops, I start them off by saying, I'm here to talk about the hard stuff. I'm here to talk about the stuff that nobody else wants to talk about. So do you think one of the reasons so many people find comfort in what you do is because you're willing to understand their grief and you're willing to talk about it?
I think so, and I feel like it's so important to talk about your loved one in spirit, and when you have a significant loss, your friend group changes, and you probably noticed this with your loss. So I feel like, especially watching my sister with her son when he passed at 19, there were friends that fell away, and maybe they had to face their own like mortality or children, or this could happen to me, and it's almost like they don't know what to say to someone grieving, and I'm sure you present this in your workshops and whatnot. And so we want to talk about them. We want to find somebody that, ooh, like I want to hear the
Yeah.
stories and I want you to understand what they were like. And even if it was hard, it's like, okay, oh, my dad's here. Oh, some people might hesitate. And I'm like, but there's a message. There's always a message of healing. And I feel like I'm going a little bit off course here, but when we cross over that threshold, we see our book of life and our shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and they do see it all, and they sit in maybe any pain that they caused you. So sitting with a medium, it might be that safe place of like where you're listening, instead of, maybe some counselors are like, well, how does that make you feel? Or, I'm going to put that back on you, where the medium's just like, your mom's here, she died from this, you were right there, you said this to her, you wrote this letter to her, da, 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 you have her ring, the diamond fell out, and blah blah blah. Oh my god, she is here, she is here, she still exists. Okay. And then I also will bring up energy. Energy cannot die or be destroyed. And I study things like some quantum physics stuff too. And people will say, like, well, I don't believe in God or an afterlife. And I'm like, well, you don't always have to, that's where I base, my beliefs, but you don't have to. If you look at energy outside of the physical body, it can still exist and do amazing, amazing things. I want to show you something. Can I grab something here?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
have to show you this. Okay. So when my mom passed, right? So my mom, and very strong Catholic, Irish, whatever, right? And she was, didn't believe at first, but then she did believe. And then when she passed, she gave me the best sign. I was teaching a grief retreat in Newport, Rhode Island, and I heard my little Irish mother, Moe, stop at the Packy and get wine for your guests. So there were 2 bottles of wine. Now I had just had surgery. They said I had uterine cancer, which I don't. I was a wreck, and I had to have a group of 20 people, mostly parents who lost children. How am I going to do this? Mom, help me, help me. There's 2 bottles of wine. Now keep in mind, my mom's name is Grace Agnes. These were the bottles of wine left. 2. That's it. A bottle of Grace and a
Oh,
bottle of Agnes.
oh my gosh.
So, you know what? I hope everybody gets a sign like that where nobody can talk me out of
Yeah.
this. And even when it happened, I stood there like this. Is this happening? And
Yeah.
then the clerk, I was like, this is my mother. And my husband was like, ring her up. It's her mother.
That
How great is that, Gary? So things
is.
open up to the possibilities. Be Larry, just, go on recommendations and go in with an open mind. Do not offer too much information, because when you're nervous, you're like, oh yeah, blah blah blah, and dee. Let them do a lot of the talking. And then you also want to be aware if someone's asking you a ton of questions. I teach my students of mediumship, try not to ask questions, just deliver it. And you're not going to be 100% right, but it's enough. It's enough if you are a good medium and you're interpreting correctly, and there you go.
Yeah. Wow. So in a way, you're offering people grieving a loved one the hope of being reunited with them. So do you think the gift you're giving them is that you're answering the question, is there life after death?
Oh, absolutely. So it's the continuity of life. It is, my nephew says, Auntie, I'm not dead. I'm just different.
Mm,
Um, Auntie, I'm at another level above you. So we are vibrations of energy at levels. And how do we raise that vibration to be able to connect to the other side, right? Or this room next door, or whatever it is, doing things to get out of our head. And that's where your work comes in, peeling back the layers of grief like an artichoke so you can find the heart again, learning to live this life, sliding into home plate when it's your time and they're there to reunite with you. They're rooting for us. We want you to find joy through grief. We want you to live the best life you can. I am okay, and you will see me again one day. And try not to feel guilty when you celebrate and have a great time. It actually, it's like a ding, 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 a big tip at the bar in heaven, really.
yeah. Yeah. So I read it, obviously I read your book several times, so I know all about you. But I know that you've had your own losses. And so I would assume that your knowledge and experience of the afterlife, eases your own pain. So I'm wondering, Maureen, what kind of advice can you give everyone watching that's struggling with grief and missing someone they love? What would you tell them?
Oh, do you have 3 hours? And yes, absolutely. I struggle. I do what everyone else does. I'm gonna grab this too. And I every single day right in front of me, here's my little mother.
Oh,
And I am a medium, but I'm human, and I cry all the time from my mother. And I say, I can't believe you're not here, just like everybody else. But then I get the wine bottles,
yeah.
and the cardinal shows up, right? And the butterfly follows me, and the dragonfly lands on me. And, I'm walking around the house as a ladybug. Hi, mom. So the advice that I give you is baby steps, where the beginning part of grief is so different from 5 years from now, when you can't even see the light at the end of that tunnel. And I promise you that it will get lighter. You weave grief into your life. It's always going to be there. I'm sure you teach about this, Gary, but finding little ways. What if journaling works for you, but it might not for another? For me, I have to keep moving. I'm a high energy person, so I will do Tai Chi and Qigong, and I will get in the woods with the dogs, and I will even touch a tree and just kind of talk out loud. They hear you, and it's just like the oxygen you breathe. Look at, I can't prove to you that that
Yeah.
just came out of my mouth, but I know it sustains me, and I know they're gonna hold you until we can be together again one day. And people do say to me, like, not everyone over there is, puppies and butterflies. And I'm like, that's part of Earth School and our spiritual lessons, believe it or not. And I've often connected with parents, and I'd say, "Ooh, I see alcoholism." And last night I said, Dad wants to say he's sorry, and he gave you the short end of the stick. And you never got to say goodbye because you didn't speak to him for 20 years. No, I didn't. I'm like, well, he is proud of you. And then the tears come and the healing begins. And I always say, and I want you to seek out a grief counselor, because I'm not one. Okay, I've been doing this many, many years. So I work with David Kessler, who helped write the 5 Stages of Grief with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and we toured together for years. And he was a skeptic, but he has different offerings. You have different offerings, and mine are become your own medium. You can hear, it's your inside voice. that talks to you. You can feel things, and when you get chills, that's the quickening. That's when the spirit body has enveloped like your aura. It's like a hug from heaven without a dream. You can just sense things, feel things, trust your intuition. Baby, you were born this way, so you have it.
Maureen, thank you so much for helping us understand how spirit mediums can help us ease the pain of grief and loss. And I just want to say to everybody that's watching, if you're dealing with grief, try to keep an open mind about mediums because you might be pleasantly surprised. And if you want to learn more about Maureen, grab a copy of her book, The Medium Next Door. You can get it at Amazon.com. And for information on any of Maureen's upcoming live events, you can visit her website at maureenhancock.com. And you can also follow Maureen on Facebook at her Facebook page called Maureen Hancock Fan Page. I love it, so I follow it all the time.
I love it.
And
And I'm
don't,
on TikTok.
there you go.
I'm
She's
on
on TikTok
TikTok,
too.
Instagram, and I have a podcast. Did you know that?
There you go. And is there anything else you want to share with us? Any exciting news that's coming up?
Well, I'm at Gaia Sphere with Gaia in Boulder, Colorado. That's March 18th and 19th with a bunch of speakers like Anita Morjani and some other folks. That's really cool. I'm all around too. Canyon Ranch in Arizona the end of this month, but I'm all around the New England area and I have lots of new stuff coming up. And I'll be planning some grief retreats for the fall. I have a lot of small groups like that. And then my sister and I do Finding Joy Through Grief. Rosie Dalton, she's a grief coach after she lost her son. This is what she did, channeled this. And my podcast, The Medium Next Door, there's 10 episodes that can teach you even more about what we just spoke about. So yeah, check it out.
Great. And I do have to ask you this question because I get asked it all the time in my groups and workshops about you, is that you do not do private readings anymore. Is that correct?
So I don't do private for the general public. For 23 years, I've been doing free readings for parents who just lost children. I have quite an extensive wait list. So if I can't get you on Zoom, then I usually give free tickets to a show and make sure you get a connection. And that's just, I work with cancer children doing holistic healing. That's my background as well. And I forgot to mention, I'm going to be in Costa Rica the end of April for a total mind, body, and soul reset, and everybody gets a message from spirit. So there's different places where, I'm doing small stuff where you're guaranteed a message, but just for the parents that have experienced a loss within a year, I wish I could get to everyone. And but that's my volunteer stuff. Yeah. But I can recommend mediums if you want to reach out.
Great. Okay, great. And also don't forget to follow me on Facebook at Surviving Grief. And if you want to get a copy of my book, Surviving, Finding Your Way from Grief to Healing, you can get that on Amazon or you can visit my website at Surviving Grief. It's sgrief.com. And if you have any comments or questions or anything that maybe Maureen didn't address in this video, feel free to email me at gary@sgrief.com. And I just want to thank you all for joining us. And I hope that you find some comfort on your own personal journey. And just remember what I always say, we're all just walking each other home. Thank you again so much, Maureen. It was great
You're
talking with
welcome. And hugs from heaven.
you. Take care.